Hi, Cheryl.
Yeah, good evening, my friends and family. My name is Jerry Millen, and I be alcoholic. First and foremost, I always want to thank God for my life, y'all, in the program Alcoholics Anonymous for helping me find a God in my own conception. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Alice, I want to thank you for asking me to come out and participate in my sobriety tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to do that. Teresa, Fair, thank you, big sis, for that introduction. You know I love you. You definitely one of my sheroes around here. A lot of you on here too. Marilyn, I see you guys around. Selena, and I shouldn't start naming names because feel like I need to name everybody. So I apologize for starting to do that. But I just really want to thank y'all who got here before me because you saved the seat for an alcoholic like Jerry. Seems like the longer I stay around here, the more the more I get to understand the meaning of mercy and grace, right? Because if you ask Jerry where he would be 9,414 days ago, it would not be sitting in a meeting on Zoom talking to you good people about step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with a power that I believe that kicked me to the curb when I got here. And that was evident by the life that I was living and the life that, you know, the kids was going through at the behest of my own hands. When I got here, all I really wanted to do was just be a good dad. I landed on the doorstep of a sober living December the 2nd in 1999, more dead than alive, and it took a while for me to get there. I was 38 years old when I landed on that doorstep, and it had been 11 years since I laid eyes on my own mother, 11 years since I seen my own baby sister, and I thought I was okay with that. I dropped my oldest son off when he was 12, y'all. He would be 28 years old before I lay eyes on him again. I got to this program, there was a hole in my soul and my insides hurt. And you people told me that this is the only place you can come. Where the worse off you are when you get here, the better your chances of staying. And see, Jerry needed to have the experience that Jerry has so Jerry can unlearn, everything he thought he knew about religion. But I was mistaken. You people wasn't preaching religion, you was preaching spirituality. And if you had asked me when I was growing up, Jerry, where you want to be? Oh, alcoholic crackhead. You know what I'm saying? Sure. I had no idea what that was. That's not what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be, I wanted my kids to look at me with respect, right? With reverence, right? I wanted to be my children's hero. I wanted my daughter to put her hands in mine and I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to feel safe. But that's not who got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Who got to the room of Alcoholics Anonymous was a grown man, 38 years old, who got the car shot up with a 5-year old in the front seat and the Christmas toys in the trunk. I got the Alcoholics Anonymous with trying to trade my daughter for one more drink. I got the Alcoholics Anonymous with my life burned down to the ground and estranged from everybody that I love. And I didn't know how I got there. In the end, I was just drinking just to forget what drinking and using had got me, and I was just a pitiful soul. And I just thought I was just going to die that way. I really, really did. So when, ooh, so when I hear people like T and Marilyn and all you people and the Selenas and stuff, and you saved a seat for me when you guys welcomed me when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the longer I stay sober, I realized how big of a thing that was. Y'all read the spiritual experience. Herbert Spencer is one of my guys, right? Because he had wrote a quote too that says, "The greatest crime one could commit against oneself is to steal from yourself and not know that something was missing." See, I got to introduce the Alcoholics Anonymous January of 1996, right? Because I just got the car shot up with my 5-year-old in the front seat and the Christmas toys in the trunk. And I knew something was wrong and I knew I was in trouble. By January of 96, I was going through the yellow pages, right? Living in Bellflower, California. And I didn't even know what I was looking for, y'all, to be perfectly honest with you. All I know is I needed some help. And the way I was raised back east is, what happens in this house stays in this house. But I had to come outside the box, man, because I didn't know what was wrong. And these poor kids was dying the same alcoholic death I was. They didn't have the benefit of the drink. They just didn't have it, and I was all they had at that time. I was a single parent and I wasn't nothing. And like I said, I knew what my job was as a dad. Keep a roof over their head, keep food in their belly, clothes on their back, keep them washed, bathed, groomed, and keep the boogeyman out the house. But I couldn't protect them from me. And I was dying on the inside. And I made a call to that one guy, man. It was a real nice guy. Thank God for phone lines, man. He was a live individual. And I was like, well, I guess I can tell him something. because he ain't gonna be able to eat me. You know what I'm saying? He won't think too bad about me, and he don't know me. He sent me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was at Yukon Elementary in Torrance, California. And I walked off into that room, and it looked just like this Zoom room, except they were live. They was hugging and smiling and stringing whole sentences together. You know what I mean? And and I'm like, oh God, this guy sent me to the wrong place. He sent me to the happy place. You know what I mean? Because wasn't nothing happy in my life. I had no idea that I was in an emergency room for a guy like me. Now my back pockets is touching. My life is burnt down to the ground. I just damn near got my 5-year-old killed, and now I got an opinion. Why? Because you guys have used God name and a curse word in the same sentence. And I heard it. I said, these people are going to hell. You know. And then at the end of the meeting, I didn't hear much in the meeting. You guys held hands and you chanted a prayer. Ooh, yeah, this looked like some Jim Jones stuff right here. So I'm gonna keep my distance. I'm just waiting for the purple Kool-Aid to come out the back. You know what I mean? Because that ain't how I get down. But the truth of the matter is, y'all, I've been going to hell since I was 12, and I didn't realize that till I started writing in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because the pastor used to say, if you did it, if you think it, you did it. So you was guilty. And at 12, my hormones, my puberty was kicking in, and I should see them women in them nice tight dresses at church. And I used to hold my head down. I had never had sex up to this point, but I've heard my mom and dad and my uncles and aunts and all them having it. And so I would hold my head down in church, and my mom would elbow me, right? And she'd be like, boy, don't go to sleep. Don't sleep in church. And I said, Mom, I'm not trying to sleep. I'm trying not to go to hell. You know what I mean? I couldn't really tell her what was going on. So at 12 years old, man, I have never been able to to live up to this God. So, in the big book, we got steps, right? And before I got to step 11, there's a whole lot of other steps that I needed to work, right? Because so when I got burnt it all down to the ground, when I conceded to my innermost self that I couldn't do this thing alone, you people were still there for me, even though I had been doing the AA hokey pokey for the last 4 years, right? I got introduced in 96. I didn't get sober until 99. So it's close to 4 years that I was doing the AA hokey pokey. I had one foot in, had one foot out. I go to all of my commitments and I spent all about. But one thing I hadn't done was the 12 steps to Alcoholics Anonymous, back to where Herbert Spencer talks about the greatest crime, right? One could commit against oneself is to steal from yourself and not know that something was missing. Jerry had been stealing from himself for 4 years, and I didn't know what was missing. Lack of power was my dilemma. You people were trying to tell that to me, and I heard y'all, but I didn't heard y'all, but I still had that little prejudice, right? That I had that I came up in here with, right? The guy that I never measured up to, and I was confusing. Religion and spirituality. But when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Because when a guy wrote in my big book on that blank page, he says, Jerry, religion is for people who fear hell. Spirituality is for people who had already been. And about time I heard that because my life was burnt down to the ground to the point where, there was no other way but up. And on that last day, before I surrendered, I done burnt it down to the ground again. I called this guy named Earl M. He was my sponsor on paper only, and I told him everything was going wrong. I done spent all the kids' money that they entrusted me to feed them with on the football team. I done stole my friend's car and sold everything up in it. I'm about to get evicted. I just sold my car to pick apart with 3 literature commitments in the trunk. I told you I was all about them commitments, man. I really was, and and I called him and told him a little bit about what was going on. And this guy told me, he said, Jerry, is that it? I said, what you mean, is that it? That's a lot. I'm about to be evicted. I ain't got no car. So, I got 3 literature commitments I got to pay for. You know what I mean? I got a bunch of parents I owe a bunch of money to. That's a lot. He said, Jerry, you hadn't set any records. What are you willing to do different this time? And I said, whatever you ask me. He sent me to an interview with a guy named Carl Morris. He did an intake interview on me. He asked me what my drug of choice was. And I was whispering because I was ashamed of what I was doing. He said, excuse me, say it again. I said, one more time, Jerry. Crack. And he stopped writing. He said, well, you ain't got no money to move in now, do you? I got excited and disappointed all in the same stroke because he understood where I was coming from, right? He understood. And he said, today's your lucky day. Since you're Earl, baby, I'm going to let you move into this sober living without a penny in your pocket. That guy made a decision that day, December the 2nd, 1999, that changed this alcoholic life because he didn't have to. Now, I got to that sober living, y'all, and I don't know if you guys ever remember the show called The Living Color, but there was a character, Jim Carrey had a character on there called Fire Marshal Bill. Swear to God, that's when I answered the door. It's broad daylight. I knock on the door. The dude comes to the door. He's short. You know, he's talking real fast. He said he's been expecting me. His teeth moving at one speed, his lips moving at another. And I'm thinking, I done been up for 7 days. I done broke something. And I'm like, Lord Jesus, I hope this can get fixed. You know what I mean? And I would find out later that he had two plates and his dentures just wasn't tight. You know what I mean? They were just a little loose. And all this man asked me was, Jerry, are you hungry? I said, excuse me. He said, are you hungry, brother? And I broke down weeping on the doorstep of that sober living, December the 2nd of 1999. More dead than alive because I couldn't take another step, living the way I was living. And I knew my father was probably rolling over in his grave, man. You know what I mean? He said, you don't cry in front of another man. You don't show that type of weakness, you know? You fight, you fight, you fight. And that kept me sick, 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 you know? And I just couldn't go on anymore, right? And I tell you, I told God knows what he doing because the guy who came to help me up, because I just went down on one knee, y'all, I couldn't go anymore. His name was Dirty Red. And he had some ink on his neck that said we could not be friends, let alone share a roof. But Jerry had no more run left in him. And when I got in that sober living yard, they said, go ahead into the back room. It's called the runway, man. Get some rest. We're gonna go get you something to eat. I got back in that room and I had an honest conversation with God. And I said, hey, I know we hadn't I said, listen, God, I know we ain't talked in a long time and I know I've been lost. But if you give your boy an opportunity at this thing called life, I'd be forever grateful and in your servitude. And man, he had already had me covered, man. God met me right where I was at. And I said, the only thing I hadn't done around here with Alcoholics Anonymous was the 12 steps. Is anybody timing me? Because I don't see a timer. And boy, can I talk. Because I hate that.
I'll let you know when there's 5 minutes, Jerry.
Could you give me
You're
10,
good.
John? Could you give me 10?
Yes,
Okay, thank
absolutely.
you. So anyway, I got in that. I said I made God a promise that the only thing I hadn't done around here was the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would not leave until I did those 12 steps. And I got busy working that inventory, y'all, because I had conceded to my innermost self that a life ran on self-will by Jerry can hardly be a success. And thank God for step two. See, I had to come to believe. I came to believe because I didn't believe God was working for me. You guys told me I was agnostic. It's okay. Just keep coming back, Jerry. You know, because if you look at it, it says came to believe. So I ain't got to believe right now. I just got to keep moving. And when I did that third step inventory over my sponsor's house, on my knees, I did feel a little something. But I tell you what, the price I paid to get here was different than the price I had to pay to stay. And when I really got to that fourth step, and I seen myself in that fourth column, how selfish and self-centered I was, how petty, how egotistical, how ashamed I was of myself and who I had become, and how I just had to lie my way through and all the people and the bridges that I burned along the way. I got to see who Jerry really was, and I already knew, but I just needed to see it and share that with another human being and in front of God, and on 6 or 7, I go off by myself, and then the big checks come, right? Because I mean, that inventory, man, made that list. And I didn't put my baby sister name on that list, but my sponsor asked me to, because he said, you said you was willing to do anything. And I put her on that list, man. And, I got to make my first amends to my mom, y'all, and who she hadn't seen in 11 years. And when I knocked on her door, I knocked on her door, y'all. It's a lot to that story. I ain't got time to tell. But anyway, because the story I want to tell you is on the backside of all that. Anyway, I did my very first men's with my mom. She hadn't seen me in 11 years. That woman seen my face for the first time. She grabbed her, she started crying, and she hugged me so dang tight, like she had never going to let me go, And that was the direct result of that process outlined in the book, and you people in rooms like this, and she told me about how those 11 years I had aged her because I seen it on her, and I knew how it was a direct result of me, And but when I did that inventory, when I did that amends, the first amends, I felt like I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's just what it took for a guy like me, And I would go on to keep on doing those amends, right? Because once I got that one out the way, it's like I had wings, man, and I was flying around here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I and there was more work to be done, right? So we're talking about step 11, right? It talks about because the whole paragraph said there's a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer, right? Taken separately, these practices can bring a lot of good benefit. However, but when they're logically related and interwoven as a result, is an unshakable foundation. I call that the no matter what club. And if you've been around here in Alcoholics Anonymous long enough, you're going to go through some things that no matter what, we don't drink. In 2008, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. Now that was going to be my reservation. If mom goes, then I can go back to doing what I was doing. I was 9 years sober though when she got diagnosed with cancer, And part of my men's tour, y'all, was I got to call her every day. And to hear her deteriorate from March of the 2008 to December the 1st of 2008 when she passed of cancer because she had did a DNR. She wasn't taking any medication or doing anything else like that. And that was her wish. She wanted her quality of life to be what her quality of life was. And me and my baby sister didn't have a say in it, you know, and I just love to tell you that I was okay with that in that moment. But the only thing I was okay with is that it dawned on me that I got to spend a whole 9 years sober with my mom, a whole 9 years. And although that her body was leaving, her memory wasn't. And the last thing that I whispered in my mom's ear was, your baby and your baby sister, your daughter's gonna be okay, Mom. We're gonna be okay. I'm gonna take care of baby sis, because that was her wish. When the last question I asked her was, what can I do to make you possibly whole on that amends? She said, if you make it right with your baby sister, your mama will be okay, y'all. And that's how God put it all together in one swoop on that particular night. So, you know, I'm moseying on and through this Alcoholics Anonymous, man, and I get to this part where I'm actually, you know, 3 years ago, I'm talking to my wife and we decide she's never had a child. And I'm like, baby, I'm 60 years old. I don't think I want to have any more kids. You know what I mean? And obviously, she's a little younger. You know what I mean? So sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, asking only what his will for me is and the power to carry that out, you know, and we decided to have a child. In the 7th month of that pregnancy, y'all, she got real sick. She came down with preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. And you know, when I'm telling you, when you got to have an unshakable foundation, that no matter what club is for real. Because we laid up in that hospital for 6 hours, and on the 6th hour, the doctor said, listen, we got to take this child because your wife and the baby is in danger, and we got to do it now. And I got to stand across the hall and watch them work on my wife to bring that baby into this world. September the 8th of 2023, I named after my mom. Little Earthling was born at 2 pounds. She was big enough to fit in the palm of my hand, you know, and I'm standing there with nobody around, ain't nobody to call, but it's just me and God. You know, before she went in, she had grabbed my hand and she started crying. She said, baby, if you got to make the choice, choose the child. And I'm thinking, boy, that's some good she-wrote stuff right there. I said, but check this out. I got a God big enough to bring both of y'all home. Now, in my heart of hearts, I knew that he could, but I just didn't know if he would. I knew he could, though. I knew he could, because up to this point in my sobriety, he had proved himself bigger than any problem that I ever had. Because I came in here telling, you know, God how big my problem was. But today I live telling my problems how big my God is. I don't sweat the small stuff because it's all small stuff to my God. You understand what I'm saying? It's all small stuff. It might be big in my head, but it's small to him. And I know that to be a fact today. And I told her, I looked in her eye, and I wanted to cry, but I couldn't because she was already beat me to it. And I said, listen, I got a guy big enough to bring both of y'all home. Don't you worry about nothing. I'll be here when you get back. And I stood across that room, man, and they brought my daughter out at 11:30. And at 1:15, they wheeled my wife in. And God had brought both of them home. Excuse me. But I was standing in one spot that whole time, watching them work on my wife. That one spot. And thank God he does what he do. Now we got this child and she's in the NICU for 6 weeks, and I'm going up there every day to pray for her. I'm laying hands on this big old blue incubator, man, because you know some of the kids didn't make it in that NICU. And I told God, listen, let your will be done here. Let your will be done here. And got to bring her home in 6 weeks. I got a picture, right? When I went to pray one morning, I went to pray for her, and she looks up at me and she grabs my finger, and her hands are so little, all she got is just the first digit of my finger. And if that wasn't a message from God for me, I don't know what is, you know. And we named it after my mom. And you know, my mother-in-law crazy, so we had to throw her name in there too. So your wife ain't listening. You know, and so Earthine Ann was born September the 18th of 2023. Now, I got introduced to a newborn 8-year-old some years ago, to the point where I had to write 5 years of resentment on his mama. And let me show you how God worked. Now, I wanted this chick to be put in the trunk because see, the way she introduced this 8-year-old to me is she sent the state of California after me, and they was garnishing me $1,000 every paycheck. I'm sorry, a month, right? And I had to write inventory. I'm gonna tell you something, it's power in the pen. And I was writing inventory, and I was writing inventory, and I was writing inventory, and I was writing inventory. And I got to the point where she even got her own God-given name back, right? So, and now I'm married to this woman. And so this son, we interacting because we cordial, right? Because he's still my son as well, And so anyway, I was sitting around the table one day and I was talking to my wife, and she was talking about, so we need to pick some godparents. And I'm like, yeah, who do you got? And my wife mentions in her name, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You must be crazy. You know what I'm saying? And godparents, guess what? I trust that God gave me who he had me to have, and I trust her intuition over mine. And that woman I had to write on for 5 years became Little Earthine's godparent, her and her husband. And I got to be honest with you, it wasn't my first choice, but they were a godsend. They were a godsend. They show up all the time. You ever want to cut God loose, man? I have to learn to listen to that inner voice, right? But I gotta keep it clean, because he's been there, right? Because it's introspective. He's in there, right? He's in there, but sometimes he's blocked by, pomp, worship, and calamity of other things, right? So in order for me to communicate with God, I have to be willing to go to him every morning, right? And I do my 10th at night, right? I don't have to, I get to, right? And the reason I do that, right? Because I want to make sure I ain't shit on none of God's people today. And I want to make sure I was the best possible me that I can. I want to make sure that I gave more than I took, because I was such a taker when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I just wanted to make sure that I left a little more than I took, man. And my whole thing is, man, if I die, I leave this place a little better than I left it. I'm good. Mission accomplished. So when I wake up in the morning, sometimes it's just simple as, because I'm always the first one up, right? And sometimes it's just simple as, God, let me be a little bit more like you today, a little less like me, and I'll lay there and hear what he got to say. In my day, sometimes I don't get information. You know what I mean? All the white. I remember one Thanksgiving. I prayed that morning. And I'm going over my daughter's house because I did all the barbecue for the food. And I'm heading over my daughter's house with all this barbecue. I'm getting off the freeway, right? And I see this lady. It used to be a strip club on Artesia in Paramount. It used to own by 3 cops. Anyway, long story short, she's coming out of that parking lot. She's pushing a basket, right? Obviously, this lady is homeless. You know what I mean? So I pull over real quick because, hey, man, I wave her down. I'd like to offer you a plate of food. This lady said, only if you'll share some with me. Look at God. Pop the trunk. We eating ribs and chicken. You know what I mean? Some hot links. You know what I mean? And that was one of the best meals that I shared. I wasn't too busy to sit there and break bread with one of God's children. And that had blessed me. I think about this lady all the time. And you know what? They said you got to be careful who you entertain around there, because you might be entertaining angels. You never know. You never know, man. And not that it matters, but I never smelt her or anything like that, right? But she looked like she'd been out there for a long time, man. We just sitting there talking about, and she was like, I'm okay, honey. I am where I'm supposed to be, and just for that moment, man, that's when I feel God's presence. When I feel God's presence through prayer and meditation, it's when I'm helping another one of his kids. I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, right? Especially if I can get it done without you knowing about it. It don't get no better than that. It don't get no better than that. But I have to practice, right? It's a practice. I ain't perfect. You know what I mean? I ain't perfect at all, because prayer and meditation keeps me, because God will for me sometimes just don't line up with Jerry's will. Let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? So, because I want what I want when I want it. But here's the thing. I mostly have a pretty quiet heart. I'm pretty much happy, joyous, and free most of the time, because I'm living the way I know he would have me to live. Do I do it perfect? Absolutely not. But guess what? You people taught me around here, this is the place we can come where we don't shoot our wounded. We just don't do that. And as long as I stay honest, I get to keep my seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the only thing I can do to mess it up is take a drink. It's the only thing I can do to mess it up is take a drink. If you be new to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to invite you to come on in and sit all the way down. The information outlined in the book, along with a little application, will produce the transformation that's in the process outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, I couldn't think Jerry way into better living. Jerry had to live his way into better thinking. Thank you, John. I see that. I had to live my way into better thinking. You people told me it was simple. You wanted to be a good dad. You wanted to be a hero. Just make it home with the paycheck. You know what I mean? Pay the bills, Jerry. Keep the food in the house, and so I got to see it was simple because I always, I used to come back off them runs. Man, I used to come back off the runs, and my son been laying on the couch for 3 days, crying. My daughter upset, and I would have to lay them promises on him that it's going to be different next payday. Dad promised. And at that point in my drinking career, I just really wanted to be judged by my intentions instead of my actions because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And you people have told me I needed to learn how to live in Alcoholics Anonymous and visit the world. I do that through prayer and meditation. They say this is a compliment, but they say I find a friend everywhere I go. I think it's a compliment. I like it because I love God's people. I even like the ones that don't like me. I just ain't gonna be speaking to them all the time. You know what I mean? But I like I say, I live pretty much happy, joyous, and free most of the time. And I keep this thing going on about the self-examination because there ain't nothing wrong in the world. It's how I view the world. My perception of anything is always the problem, you know. And you people help me to see the world in a new pair of glasses. You do. And it seems like the longer I stay sober, the more grateful I am of this life that has been given to me by that process outlined in the book, a sponsor, sponsees, and a power greater than myself, and the actions I take to stay free on a regular basis. And this is a program of action, spiritual in nature, man. And you know, you you'd already leave the obsession to drink, so I don't got to worry about the phenomenon of craving anymore. But alcoholism comes in a body, not a bottle. You know what I mean? So I get to work on the I self for me on a regular basis. And that's through the prayer and the meditation. That's the quieting the mind. That's the asking God, what would he have me to be or do today? And I know if I like it, it might not be what God want me to do. But so um, I'm gonna keep coming back and I'm about to start babbling. So at that point, I'm gonna go ahead and give this meeting back to you guys. I want to thank you for allowing me to come out and participate in my own sobriety. My name is Jerry Miller and I be alcoholic. Thank you for letting me share.
Uh, yeah, so please think of some questions to ask him and short little comments if you have to. Yay, Alice is in the house, but I'm gonna go ahead and pick, I can't see a thing. Oh, Alice can't unmute. Hold on. Hold on, Alice. Ask to unmute. There she is. Okay, Alice, take it away. I can't see anybody's name anyway.
Thank you, Teresa. I really love you. Jerry, thank you for a lovely talk. I really, really appreciate you, and what a gift it is to walk this path with you. Vera, you are up first. I'm thrilled that you've got your hand up. Please come on in.
Hey, Vera, grateful recovered alcoholic. So grateful to be here. And Jerry, thank you so much for your share tonight. I was taking notes, and something that really stood out for me was when you talked about your children, but specifically you wanted to be judged by intentions instead of actions. And I'm always thinking, well, that wasn't my intention, right? But like people are affected in certain ways. And so I'm just wondering if you can maybe just like elaborate on that.
Jerry, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, Vera. Thank you for your question. Yeah, my intentions were to keep the lights on at the house, Vera. My intentions was to make it home with the paycheck every week. My intention was to keep them kids fed, clothed, and taken care of. And I just couldn't pull it off because the drink always took precedence over what I was supposed to do as a father.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Lana, you are up next. Please come on in.
Okay. Hi, Jerry. Thank you for your share. It was wonderful. I came in about halfway through it, though. I apologize.
Mhm.
So my question is while you were drinking, do
Mhm.
you feel like you were less pragmatic than you are now that you're sober, or are you about the same, have the same amount of pragmatism?
Oh no, I got. Mm, I I wasn't pragmatic when I was drinking. I was a drunk. I was- yeah, not even close. So yeah, now I would have more now. Absolutely.
Thank you for the question. And of course, Jerry, thank you for the answer. Marilyn, it is you. My friend Marilyn.
Thank you so much, my dear friend Alice. My name is Marilyn. I'm an alcoholic. So grateful to be here in this space.
Mhm.
This is my favorite space. And
Mhm.
Jerry, you're one of my favorite men in Alcoholics Anonymous because of when I see you, and I do have a question, but when I see you and it's just a light. You're such a light because I know your story because it's so similar to mine, right? Uh, I have 2 adult children of an alcoholic, me, drug addict, me, couldn't make it home with the paycheck, me. I know the feelings. And your story is so powerful and so beautiful. And I love it. I don't care how many times you tell it, it makes me cry because I still feel God's love and his presence in your life. But the question is this, and I'm really talking to myself, so I don't want to cry, but the question is this. How I'm struggling with this right now. How do you deal with the knowing, because I know it comes back to you, maybe some of the pain that you've inflicted on your children, and even though maybe you've even went through the amends process, right? And
Mhm.
trying to make an living amends today. Sometimes it still comes to me and I'm trying to navigate those feelings.
Mm.
And how do you navigate through those feelings when they
Mm.
come back to you?
You trying to make me cry again. Mercy and grace, Marilyn. Listen, I got this little one here, and it would come to me like I would be just feeding her. You know what I mean? And I remember when my son was that age, and he wanted his milk that I went to the store to get, but I was in the bathroom putting it in my veins, and they would be crying on the other side of the door. So yeah, that type of stuff still comes in, right? It still comes in, but I have made a living amends to that kid. You know what I mean? And but that doesn't stop the memory from coming. And when the memories come like that, what it does, it lets me know, right, that still under mercy and grace. You know what I mean? That this child that I'm holding today ain't gonna never have to see that as long as I stay close to you people, one day at a time. And so that's how I navigated today, right? And I can't let them hold that against me either, because kids will have you jumping through hoops like Barnum and Bailey circus and crap. You know what I mean? So thinking you owe them something, but yeah. Thank you, Marilyn, for that question. I love you too, sis.
Thank you for a beautiful answer, Jerry. So honest. Lauren, come on, Lauren.
Thank you, Alice. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Oh, Jerry, thank you so much. I love all of your enthusiasm for life and your honesty. Honesty is what helps me. So I'm so grateful for you being so honest today. I heard a lot in your share. You indirectly told us how much God speaks to you through people in your life. Like you mentioned family members and strangers as well. So my question, I guess it's a 2-part. Has that ever challenged you? Have you ever fought back to, is that a message from God? And I guess in the same way, how do you know when it is God speaking to you?
Well, usually it'll come in 2 parts for me, right? Because I dig deep sometimes, Lauren, and I like the way I sound sometimes, you know what I mean? And sometimes me and God sound alike, right? We do. Especially if it's something I want. Boy, we sound a lot alike. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, God told me. Yeah, and then 3 months later, I'm in a fetal position. Yeah, she wasn't for me. Yeah, bro, crazy. You know what I'm saying? So, usually, if it comes from one of y'all, I have a lot of friends and acquaintances in Alcoholics Anonymous, and usually, I'll get a confirmation, right? I get a confirmation. So just like when she selected who she selected, I watched my daughter run down the driveway. I apologize. Boy, she gets away fast. I get a confirmation, right, on when she selected her godparents, right? It was like the craziest suggestion on the planet, you know. And I got a confirmation in a dream. And then I talked to my sponsor about it, you know, and see, I got to get Jerry personal stuff out the way. See, I see stuff in the flesh and then I see stuff in the spirit. So those are two different, you know what I'm saying, two different visions, right? And so I know which is the different one. Cause you know, if I'm angst and you know what I'm saying, it's rubbing me the wrong way, you know, it's probably I need to grow through something. So yeah, I wait for the confirmation. And when I don't know what to do, Lauren, I don't do anything. I freeze. Don't move.
Lauren, thank you for the question. Thank you so much for putting your hand up. And Jerry, of course, thank you for the answer. Ryan! Ryan! Come on, Ryan.
Good night, everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm an alcoholic.
All right.
Alice, thank you. You were at our meeting on Saturday. Yeah. So my apologies to being late. I was on a meeting in Barbados, and after the meeting, I jumped on this meeting, and there's a reason why things happen. So my question, Jerry, thank you. I basically caught the end of your sharing, but we're talking about kids right now, right? And I have a daughter that she resides in Canada. I'm here in Guyana, and she's 37. She missed I miss most of her life because of my journey and so on and so forth. I have two kids here in Guyana. One is 11 and one is 7. And up to this day, I'm coming up, I'm just over 7 years, but I take my program very seriously. And my higher power is a big thing in my life and so on. But I really don't know how to communicate with my kids. And it's killing me. Honest to God, it's killing me. You know, I do not know how to communicate with my kids. The financial aspects and all of that, I will go to the extreme to do anything for them. But to have that personal relationship with my kids, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. And it's killing me. Any ideas?
I'd say talk to your sponsor if you got one, and you know, prayer and meditation, man. To be perfectly honest with you, Ryan, it's tough, man. Especially look, my oldest son was 16. I mean, he was 12 when I dropped him off. It would be 16 years before I seen him again. And the year my mom got diagnosed with cancer, we found him. My daughter did. Scared me to death. I'm like, let lying dogs lie. You know what I mean? Scared me to death. But I've been waiting to make amends to him for 9 years. And there he was. And I got a chance to make that amends to him that year. And you know, there was a lot to go along with that because he'd been practicing hating me for a lot of years. But he said something happened when he heard my voice. Only God, man. Only God. I do the next indicated thing. You know, I do the footwork, man. I leave the results up to God. So do the footwork. You know, Ryan, whatever that is. I don't know what that look like for you, but just do the footwork and leave the results up to God. It'll be all right.
Ryan, thank you for being here. Thank you for such a beautiful question. Something I think a lot of us can relate to. And of course, Jerry, thank you for the answer. So we've got time for another couple questions, Jerry, until we get another hand, or I could call on somebody. Oh, Pat. Come on, Pat.
Thanks, Alice. Jerry, thank you so much. Really, really powerful share. My question is regarding the 11th step and and the reading that we do. And I guess my question is this, as far as that spiritual experience that the book refers to, would you, for you personally, did you have, you know, what was the nature of your experience? Is it some kind of an ongoing thing? Or was it the white light experience? Or, you know, can you talk a little bit about when you got to the point where you were, you know, you were jumping off the bridge and saying, okay, I got it.
Mm. Well, Pat, to be honest with you, it's an ongoing thing. It's not just one and done on an event, right? As far as my spiritual experience is concerned, I've had a bunch of them. You know what I mean? I had a bunch of them over the years, and sometimes, so life is lived forward is understood backwards. I don't get to see it until like I'm looking back, right? Because like I'm in this sober living. I'm going way back to the beginning. I'm in this sober living, right? And I'm grumbling because they got me cleaning up the toilets, and I got to go up to the club and pick up cigarette butts and this. I don't understand what this got to do with being sober because I'm having this Karate Kid experience, right? Wax on, wax off. And next thing I know, it's on day 30, and I'm in my home group, and they're clapping because I got 30 days. Spiritual experience, right? Gutted me in the middle of the freaking meeting. Grown ass man crying again, right? Jesus Christ, 30 days, it's along those paths. When I made amends to my son, when I told him I'm on the phone, I'm like, hey, I'm on your block, and I seen him come out the building in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? And he's running toward the car. I ran into trash cans, right? I couldn't even put the freaking thing in park, right? That was a spiritual experience because he had been hating me for the last 16 years. One more. 5 years sober. I'm sitting across the table at my mom's, right? Because I get to go home when she want me to come home. Because I get to take her shopping and grocery store and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting across the table from my mom, right? And I'm like, come on, mom, let's go. She's like, wait a minute. I need to ask you a question. I said, what? She said, who's Steve Sweeney? I say, Steve Sweeney? Where'd you get that name from? She said, well, who is he? I say, Mom, where'd you get that name from? She said, well, sit down. I sat down, and she says, I've always knew you can be the man God intended you to be. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I got a letter from a guy named Steve Sweeney. Says he's your sobriety brother. Told me what kind of man he thinks you are and what you mean in his life. That letter from that stranger was bigger than my 5 years of sobriety. Spiritual experience. All you got to do is live this thing one day at a time. It's going to happen for you, right? It's going to happen for you. Tear dropped her eye, man, and she felt like her son was going to make it. She felt like I was going to make it. I don't even know how he got my mom's address, but he is my sobriety brother. He's been my roommate for the last 25 years. We go on this men's retreat up in Malibu every year, you know what I mean? And we get up there like little women, and we just talk all night. The first night we get there, catch up, and guess what? He's also the other godparents to her thing. That's my guy. Spiritual experience, man. They happening all the time and all around us. Just got to not get too busy not to see him.
Pat, thank you for opening Jerry up with that question. Calvin, you get the last word this evening. You're muted.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, Jerry, so much for a strong message, The first guy I sponsored in Alcoholics Anonymous, and his name was Jerry Miller, like yours. And Jerry Miller was a real interesting guy. Jerry Miller was on death row. He had killed some folks, and he had life in prison. He did a life sentence, and he got out. And God brought him to me after bandit cars and empty houses and all kinds of stuff. And he saved my life. Jerry Miller saved my life. And good Lord. But you made me think of that because your name is the same. And but you brought a strong message, man. And every time I hear you, your message is strong.
Thank you, God.
And I like what you was talking about when you was praying about them kids, because they definitely get off your lap and sit on your heart. They get off your lap and sit on your heart, man. Yeah, I had my baby boy. You better than me. I had my baby when I was 43, almost 44 years old, and I thought I was pushing the limit. My God. God really love you, Jerry. We
Yeah.
really love you. And that's all I wanted to say to you, man. I
Okay.
appreciate you. Thank you, Jerry.
Jerry, thank you for putting skin on step 11. We
Mm.
don't get to step 11 out of nowhere. We get to it because we've gone through the other steps. And thank you for walking us through how step 11 looks in your life. I love you. Back to you, Michelle.